The image many people have of Spain will involve sunny blue skies, sangria, tapas, long lunches, siestas, all this sort of cliches. But the reality is, Spain has so much more to offer. Spain is rich in culture and actually has 49 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And actually Spain, on the tech front, has got some impressive stuff. Spain randomly gave us the spacesuit and is also a leader in European medical technology. We also have the home of Mondraker bikes. Now this building behind me here is completely bespoke for Mondraker, and above us here it houses every need for the company. You have everything from design, you have prototyping, you have marketing, industrial design, creative, it's all housed up here. And in this huge concrete square underneath me, you have 2 floors with bicycle assembly, production and warehousing. But to even get to all of this, you had to have someone with a pretty incredible vision. And that person is Miguel.
Bikes means everything for me. Let's say it's our passion. We really think that we can load that the key guys that started with the crazy idea still being part of the company and still being part of the core business, okay? That's really important.
As an avid downhill racer in the 90s, Miguel was actually working for Team Bike, which is a Spanish distributor of a whole bunch of cool bike brands. And it was working there that he really wanted to follow his passion and start a bike brand. Naturally, being a downhill racer, the first thing he wanted to do was release a downhill bike. And he did it with this, the Mondraker Petrol. So this was released in 2001. And although by today's standards, it does look a bit small, obviously it's got 26-inch wheels and it looks a bit steeper, it's got loads of cool stuff on it. So you've got a 4-bar linkage on the back end, something that the designers at Mondraker actually aspired to have from the beginning, and they've kind of kept throughout everything. You've got adjustable pivot points, you've got adjustable leverage and for different bottom bracket positions and all that stuff. And one of the coolest things about this bike actually is that Spanish legend Tommy Missa raced one of these in the 2003 Spanish Cup and won. So I guess you could say really the start of that mega thing with downhill the brand has just had in its heritage really started with this bike. Now interestingly, a lot of people ask about the name Mondraker because it's not really a Spanish name, is it? So it turns out that one of Miguel's other really cool things he always loved as a kid and growing up was collecting comics. And in amongst those comics, there would have been Spider-Mans and all sorts. And there was a character called Mondraker, who was a magician. Now, there's a particular trait about Mondraker that Miguel always used to love, and it was the way he'd almost seem to be able to click his fingers and just almost make the impossible happen. And, well, that's really where the name stuck, where Mondraker came from.
That subculture was a trend, a clear trend in the 80s. I mean, for all the kids, and at least in my college, everybody was crazy with the comics, okay? And I was one of them. Before getting at home a lot of mountain bike magazines, I had, well, thousands, not really, but hundreds of comics.
And kind of cool, I've seen laying around the place a few of these old stickers that have the same font as Mondraker the Magician. I love stuff like that, really cool. So following the Petrol came the Curve freeride bike in 2002. And after that, in 2003 came the first Foxy trail bike. Now this bike is really important. It's still in the lineup today as one of the most popular bikes Mondraker makes. But in 2006, they had this, the Kaiser, which was released in 2007. And this is a seriously lightweight downhill bike. It was sub 40 pounds. So you're talking 39-pound bike back then, 4-bar linkage, all the adjustability, and a semi-monocoque front end that was welded down the middle. At the time, this was kind of cutting edge. However, Miguel was still thinking further ahead. And what Miguel wanted was the company to not just make performance bikes, but to make the highest level bikes. And he knew to do that, they needed their own suspension system that would run throughout the range. So working with Spanish designer Cesar Rojo, ex-World Cup racer, they came up with the Zero suspension platform. Now this bike here is a 2009 downhill bike raced by Fabian Burrell in Maribor, where he actually won on this bike. Now the suspension design on this is the same design still used today. However, how it looks is completely different, and the other characteristics of the bike are completely different. But the beauty of having the Zero suspension platform is that every parameter on it is tunable by our designers. And what that enables is they have control over anti-squat, anti-rise, and the overall characteristics of the bike. As a result, every single bike, ranging from the Kids Factor 24-inch all the way up to the Summum downhill race bike, they all have slightly different variations of the same system. Super cool stuff. So following on from the success of that 2009 Zero prototype, in the background, Fabian Burrell, the racer, was still working with Cesar Rojo and the rest of the designers here at Mondraker. And what they realized was, with downhill bikes, head angles were getting slacker in search of stability at speed. But what was really required was a bike to be significantly longer. And this is what they came up with. So this bike was the first bike to have forward geometry on it. And essentially what that meant was they added 60 millimeters onto the front center of the bike, and they reduced the stem length to be completely directly in line, effectively a 10 millimeter stem. What this did was gave the bike a much longer wheelbase, but the cockpit was still in the same position. And this was a genius move, because if you look at where most bikes are today, it's not far off there. And Mondraker did this way back. But this was really the moment where the light bulb went off in the company. Because although it was really good and beneficial for downhill bikes, the designers were thinking, well, why should the downhill bikes have all the fun? Trail bikes, all mountain bikes, cross-country bikes, they all need a revision on modern geometry. And what they did was release the Foxy XR, the Dune XR, and the Factor XR, all featuring the same geometry concept with the longer front center and the short stems. And this bike here is one of the first Foxy XRs. Now this is a really special bike for me. I still have one of these in my loft, and it's one of my prized possessions, because this, in my eyes, was a line in the sand in terms of geometry. You have to bear in mind that this, in a size large, had a reach of 480 millimeters. It was colossal, especially if you consider the fact 140 and 160 mil bikes at the time in 2013 would have had a reach measurement somewhere between 415 and 430 millimeters. Absolutely amazing. Put your weight central on the bike, put the front wheel way out in front of you for stability and confidence, and that tiny stem gave you lightning responsive steering. Seriously aggressive stuff. And actually I just think like this really is one of the reasons I genuinely love this brand, because this bike was one of the first bikes I'd ever ridden that properly fit me. And I don't mean how high I could get the saddle or where I could get the bars. I meant the wheels were where they should be. This is a significant thing, because if you think about it, having a bike that's long when you're sat down but you've got short wheels or a short wheelbase on there, what that means is you're really top heavy. So you're moving loads to try and keep good balance on the front and rear end whilst riding. That's tiring, it's inefficient, and you don't have the best control. If your body weight can be more centralized between those two wheels, you have a better balance, uphill and downhill. And that really is the start of something special for me. But they weren't content with that, were they? Of course they weren't. So they moved on, and they did something even better and even more exciting. Check this out. Here we go. Right, before I tell you all about this, I probably need to fill you in on a bit of timeline that happened first. So, those Foxy XRs with the extreme stem on the top. Incredible performance, no doubt, but it was only available on the XR models. It was such an advantage in terms of handling that Mondraker decided that they wanted to implement forward geometry across the entire range. But quite simply put, that original 10mm stem was just too aggressive in a position. So they refined the forward geometry system by using a 30mm stem, which enabled them to have the stem in front of the steerer tube at the shortest possible size. They then altered the reach configurations to maximise on the new longer geometry of these bikes. And accordingly, they could have that across the board on their bikes, alongside the Zero suspension platform. But this, the 2015 Foxy XR, was the first bike they made fully in carbon. I've got to say, even now, it still looks as nice as, well, I had one of these, and I've got nothing but great memories of this. I had my best summers riding ever on one of these bikes. I'll tell you about that in another video, but there's a few important things to underline with this bike. Firstly, that trademark Mondraker top tube is starting to make an appearance here for the first time. That was something that you can see across the range, and it really does identify a bike. You can see a Mondraker a mile off. It just has that beautiful look, the top tube all the way into the seat stays there. Absolutely love that. The other thing with this bike is the fact that it was so difficult to manufacture. The carbon at the time, getting the engineering correct to do this was extremely difficult, and Mondraker learned everything in the process of this bike. And I think actually most of the people here, Luis, Salva, Israel, Miguel, they will all say the same things about this bike. It really did change the brand into a super high-end, top performance brand. Love it, absolutely love the scene. Right, onwards. Oh man. Look, there are literally dozens of really cool bikes in every direction. I can't go into all of them in this video, but look out for videos on the Mondraker TV YouTube channel. I'm going to take you back through the downhill bike heritage. We're going to look back at all the wild cross-country designs, and of course some of the most popular bikes like the Foxy and all the trail bikes, but I think onwards. Let's carry on for today. Now I could keep on talking about how the bikes evolved from that 2015 Foxy Carbon XR all the way through to modern day, but really there's more interesting stuff than me talking about that. I want to show you how these bikes get designed in the first place. So this is a bit of a display area with some of the modern bikes. We're going to park up right here next to this Mondraker Neat. So this is one of the latest bikes the company has released. It's a TQ motor in here, 360 watt-hour battery, a really complex bike to design with lots of things going on. And to get to this, it always starts with a proper design brief, and that goes directly to Andres and his crew.
Okay, the most important thing about Mondraker is for sure the people, is how the people drink, eat and breathe bike. I mean, we have like a brief about what kind of bike we want to design, but I think the nice thing being a small team and passionate team is the thing that we can iterate kinematics or design until we are really happy with both, with no compromise in any of the aspects of the bike.
Okay, right, don't look behind me, I just got in trouble for going in there. Right, so the room that's in there, I think is probably the coolest room in the whole building. And yeah, you can't just walk in there like I did. So it's the industrial design area. So this is where all of the cool stuff happens. So the design brief goes to this team led by Andres in there. And what they do essentially is plot out the geometry, the kinematics, and they've got all these wild concept drawings on the wall, like the coolest stuff. And they did say, if I go back and ask nicely, they're gonna make basically a few things available for us to see. So just give us a second and I'll see what they'll let us look at. Hold on.
Normally, we are working with 2 years in advance with some of them. Yeah, I mean, it can be faster if we are working in more an evolution of an existing project, like in 1 year, if everything goes smooth from designing to testing and later in production. But normally, and now with the e-bikes, we took like more time in advance.
So once all the industrial design stuff has happened and the kinematics and all the real important parts of the bike have been sort of assessed and designed and plotted out, then the prototyping happens. Now this is, I keep saying it's one of the coolest things. This is definitely the coolest thing because of the fact it's prototypes. Who doesn't like a prototype? So behind me you can see, well actually there is work in progress. So that's a neat frame with a telemetry system plugged in. You can see Salva, Israel and Luis there. Now the three of them with many other people in this company that are behind you now, they all work on the prototyping process, and it's all about making sure that correct parts are spec'd on the bike, making sure the correct shock tunes are used, even the correct shock absorbers for that model of bike. Obviously all of the ride attributes need to be done out on the trail as well, but constant testing. I'm just gonna go and find out what these guys are talking about now.
I would say it's 99% more rely on personal feelings rather than telemetry. And we've been testing with telemetry with some suspension suppliers and some suspension brands to confirm, for instance, some actual numbers or actual data. But everything it's related, and it's not just a matter of how suspension is performing. It's the sum of all parts. So it's how the bike is feeling, but there it's suspension, it's a handlebar, it's a wheel, it's a tire, everything is related. So yeah, mostly is the feeling of your own feeling rather than numbers or telemetry data.
So I've just been having a little rummage around in the prototype area, and there's just so many things, I guess, that they're just trying, experimental, as well as things that are being tested before production. There's stuff that way you can't see, there's stuff behind you can't see. But just seeing this, so this is not a production colour. This is actually like a prototype chassis bike used for testing other components on, and this one is Salva's bike. Now look at the paint job on this. Now there's a brand new thing that's going on here. So you might have seen some of the limited edition bikes from Mondraker. It's because we have our own unique paint shop facility, and they can do wild designs like this. Now I've seen a lot of custom painters setups, and it's a similar approach, except this is on a huge scale. What they can achieve in that place is just incredible. And something they told me when I was just walking around the other day just to check what they're doing out is on frames that have this kind of detailing on it, it's done with like a sponge. The painters won't do like a batch of front triangles one day and then rear triangles the next. They will do everything on the bike. So if they're doing the fork, the rocker, the back end, the front end, they do the entire thing in one go. Because the process, when you're actually doing something like this by hand, the sensitivity that you apply by hand on that day will be different to the next day. And they've had this before where you can see that maybe a different painter or a different day has happened. It's just wild, but just look at that. I'll tell you what, I need to get in the queue to get a custom one done, because this is just... Okay, so we've learned a bit about the background of the company, the history, all the cool older products. We've seen some of their most important inventions. And then of course, we've seen how they design the products, how the geometry comes about, the suspension, kinematics, all of that cool stuff. Then of course it goes to prototyping and then eventually production. But none of this is any good unless people don't know about the bikes. So the marketing team, it could be easy to think the marketing just take care of adverts and a few other things, but actually they have one of the biggest jobs, and it's probably one of the most amount of people that work in marketing. They have to make sure the spec sheets on the bikes are up to date. They have to make sure that there's media camps, so the media out there that are going to do product reviews understand the bikes. They have to do dealer camps. They have to do camps for distributors, so everyone selling the bikes can understand those bikes. It's a huge job and requires being on the road for a significant part of the year. And then of course, there's the race teams. The whole reason this brand started was because Miguel was inspired by racing, and he's just as inspired these days. And that is a huge part of marketing and making sure people know about the excellent bikes that Mondraker makes. So this area here, this is the emptiest I've seen it. There's normally hundreds of bikes in here. Obviously there is quite a few. So the marketing team are out on a demo event at the moment, so they will have been taking like crafties and crushers and neats and all sorts of bikes that would normally be here. And just behind you over there is the training area. So something very cool about this company is they train up people specifically to be mechanics and work on bikes. And to do that, they use the electric Park Tool work stands. So these are double-sided and they can be operated individually to lift up e-bikes and any number of things. And they've got these really cool displays on them that tell the mechanic the process of what they're doing. It's just like a mini replica of what we're going to see downstairs in the assembly line, but all up here. Like, this place is so dialed. Okay, so this is the pre-assembly area. So to speed up the main production process, which happens actually upstairs, I keep going like that, what they do is they take each individual component and they do everything they can to speed up the assembly process. So this is a Fox 38 fork. The steerer tube will have been trimmed down for the exact model bike that it's going to go on. It's got a barcode there that correlates to that. It's already had the star nut inserted into the steerer tube there. It's got the cable holder on there and the correct amount of spacers for that model bike. And as you can see here, there are a lot of different forks on this trolley, and everywhere I look, there are trolleys full, absolutely full of different components. So there's tyres assembled onto wheels over here. I can see some Mavic wheels with the cassettes on there and the disc rotors. And the guys just down there are actually doing this process. So don't want to interrupt them, but let's have a little look and see what they're doing. Okay, so we've just seen the pre-assembly where you get the tyres, disc rotors put on, wiring looms and a few other bits and pieces happen on some of these bikes, but the rest all happens here behind me. So I just counted and I think there's around 44 workstations in here, but they're double-sided. Yeah, so that's effectively like 88 workstations. And on every single one of these electric workstations, you've got a TV monitor on the top, and that's telling every mechanic like the torque settings and essential things they need to know as they're working, just to make sure every bike is built with the exact same tolerances, the exact same spec all the way through. And each bike is built by a single person all the way down here. It's just so awesome to see. I just love this stuff. I want to have a little snoop around and just see what's being built today. And also, my bike was built by Antonio. I wonder if, by chance, Antonio is working today. It would be so cool if he was, but it might not be because there's a lot of people that work here. So let's go and have a look. Antonio, thanks for building the bike. Ah, love that. Okay, so obviously the final part of the process then, we've just seen the bikes being put together. This is where they get boxed up. The thing that's cool about this though, is they're not just ordinary cardboard boxes. Well, they couldn't be a Mondraker, could they? So one of the coolest things that they do at this company is they're always thinking of tomorrow. Yeah, they're thinking forwards, they're thinking ahead. And they've designed these boxes from the ground up to be 100% recyclable. So there's only two components in the box that don't fit this mold, and they are the Velcro straps that are on the inside, which are reusable. You can use them to wrap tools. There's a number of things you can use them for. But the point is they're trying to think of being as sustainable as possible where they can be. Right, so the boxes themselves have biodegradable ink on the outside, so that will just naturally break down. The security seal on the outside is made of potato starch, and on the inside they have rice pulp tape. It's just brilliant, like the fact that all of this stuff is recyclable, and yes, it is just a cardboard box, but I think it really underlines the sort of values of the company and the way that this company thinks. Brilliant people, friendly people, one giant family making great stuff. Okay, well, I mean, how cool was that, and how cool is this place? I think I've covered most things that go on here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about, cooler stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But it's funny, really, because you look at the building from the outside and you look at the styling of the place, it's minimal, it's very high tech. And that could lead you into thinking that Mondraker is just about the tech. But really, that's absolutely not the case. It's like one giant family. The people here love what they do. People here just want to build the bikes they want to ride. They build the stuff they love. And I've got to say, I feel really proud to be part of this. Thanks for watching this video. If you've got any comments about anything that's been in this video, anything about Mondraker bikes, specific models, or perhaps other stuff that you might want us to make on the Mondraker TV channel, let us know in the comments underneath. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another video soon. Take care.